right, we are here again. I'm here again with Fabrice Boulanger, Baker, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Again.
And we're back to talk about human design a little bit more. This time we're going to speak strictly in human design language. We're going to kind of sometimes be talking about the gene keys a little bit more and sometimes talking about human design. And we're going to talk about human design, which is sometimes entitled the science of differentiation. And this is actually a really important distinction as to what human design is and how it's important and how it's really beneficial. So I might just turn it over to you for a minute and see what you have to say around this notion, the science of differentiation. What does that mean?
Well, I think we touched on this in the last call when talking about the uniqueness and the importance of human design and the gene keys and how I went into those systems exactly because of that specific piece. I was kind of tired of systems that were trying to fit for everyone, like the same practices for everyone, the same teachings for everyone, the same path for everyone. And then you arrive with human design and the gene keys, and astrology, is similar in a way because it starts with your birth date, your birth time, your location, and then the unique blueprint that you get in the moment of birth. Yes, and human design starts at the same point. It's with the moment of birth, and you start with your chart, and so you have this chart, this profile that is uniquely yours, and that is saying like there's only one like you. Well, it would need to be someone who's born exactly in the same place, exactly at the same time, and which would be almost impossible. But there's literally nobody like you, and that's the starting point. And it's also where we start with our own self-empowerment, and the self-empowerment goes into all other areas of our lives. And well, you do work which is very connected to relationships. Yes, evolutionary relating, and a lot of your courses, whether it's about boundaries or regulation and so on, a lot of them are going to connect to this work as well. But this is the science of differentiation. It's exactly that. It's the science of how different and unique we all are. Yeah. And well, when you go into a relationship, and I'll pass it on to you, I'm sure you have a lot to say about that, but and you wrote about this as well, then you can stop expecting something different from your partner than what they are, and you can stop acting in a way or trying to be something that you're not, because that's one of the great tragedies in relationships, is to try and be something that we're not to please the other. Yeah, and trying to fit into their fantasy, their desires, their whatever, and there, in a way, human design is the ultimate delusion killer. It's a very, very sobering wake-up call in relationships. And you have to be like, okay, let's start with the truth of who we are and how we function and what we can offer and give in relationships. And again, remembering what we said last time, that there is an evolution within those themes. So it doesn't mean that we're stuck and limited, but nonetheless, and we're going to go into the details of your and my profile, and but this is what we can expect. Do we want to work together with this? Do we want to, do I want to be with this type of person, this type of profile? And if the answer is yes, then okay, let's look at the ways in which we can relate and the ways in which we can best do this together. Yeah, but this is the foundation to real relational work. Otherwise, it's always going to be trying to do something that's just not correct for us.
Yeah, it's like when I understand my own design, I know who I am more and more, and I know how I'm going to be. And I can stop apologizing for being anything that I'm not. And when I know someone else's profile, I know roughly what I'm going to get. Like you said, there's a gradation. There's unhealthy and healthy aspects of it. We can have an unhealthy aspect of any profile type and a healthy aspect, but nevertheless, we're going to have a sense of what we're going to get. There's a frequency or a tone for each aura type, for each profile type. and then the actual design as itself, which channels are in play, which gates are in play. And then when we go into composite charts, how our gates and profiles line up for us determines a lot. But what I like, a couple of points that I really like touch back in on what you just shared is, like you shared, one of the worst things that I can do is people please. You know, if I'm people pleasing and I'm contorting myself to try and meet someone else's fantasy or expectations of me, it's suffering. It's a really painful way of existing. And likewise, if I'm attempting to force another person to meet my expectations and my ideas of how they should be, it's going to be suffering for them. They're going to feel really pained by that experience. And this is something that we do to each other in relationships all the time. Like, I expect that everyone in the world is going to think and hold the same standards and the same ideas and the same ways of being and the same ways of communicating as me. And then I'm going to get together with somebody, and we're going to, once our honeymoon period is ended, we're going to start finding like, oh, you're actually different than me. And if I try and start forcing you to be the way that I think that you should, so I can feel safe and comfortable, and you're not actually that, we're going to be in conflict all the time, just over and over again. And so this is a great map to start at least understanding to some degree that we're different and we operate in different ways. It also is a great way to like start taking our relationships into more and more transpersonal realms when we're like differentiating from our kind of personal identification by including it, but seeing the bigger picture. But that's for another time. little seed for something else that I'm working on. The other piece that I really work on, and this is in the work I do on boundaries and authentic relating as well, is intimacy occurs through differentiation. If I'm not experiencing myself as differentiated from you, I can't experience intimacy with you. I become enmeshed. I'm either enmeshed and I'm conflated with you and I'm not able to separate myself from you, or I'm behind walls and there's actually no space for seeing each other. There's like, you should be this way, and all I'm seeing is my projection of who you should be, and I'm not actually intimate with you. So it's this differentiation allows us to become into kind of a mature adult self and experience and honor each other's differences.
Yeah, and as you say this, and we've had lengthy conversations, you and I, about this stuff, but the whole work around polarity as well. You revisit this work with a new lens when you go into human design and gene keys, because it's not to take away the foundation of polarity, which is to say that you need polarity to have chemistry. You know, you need a plus and a minus in any given situation to have electricity flowing between the two. But it's not as simple as, you know, the clear-cut dynamic that we found in a lot of polarity teachings. Yeah, and depending on, because there are attributes from human design that could be considered on the more yin feminine side, and others that could be considered on the more yang masculine side. And sometimes as a man, I will have attributes in my profile that are more yin, that are more feminine. And so asking me to be yang and to be, you know, to hold that masculine pole in those specific aspects, that's going to be a real challenge. And so it's also like, where can you, you know, knowing and being realistic with which side of the polarity you can hold in different aspects of your profile. Yeah, and we could go into details of the centers and a lot of other things, because that's really interesting. But even just starting with types, you know, there are like, I don't know, I guess if we're to take the most yin of types, it would be like the pure generator, you know, and the most yang of types would be the manifestor, you know. And I've heard from generator women, like, I love to have a manifestor lover, you know, because they're just like, they just initiate, you know, and that sacral is craving that initiation. So, and I'm sure you could talk about this more because you're a manifestor yourself. But that's, you know, one of the polarities already. I'm a projector, and on one hand, the projector is very yang because of this penetrative aura and this laser-like focused, you know, presence when being with someone. But at the same time, the projector doesn't have, you know, its ability to initiate, and also doesn't have consistent energy, you know, all the time. And so it has certain qualities that today would be seen as not being man enough. Yeah, and that can be a real challenge for a projector man. Now, when you learn how to work with it and so on, it doesn't have to be an issue. But nonetheless, when you hear the strategy of the projector, which is to wait for the invitation, you know, that doesn't sound very, you know, like when you think about men and you're supposed to initiate interactions and you're supposed to go after women and you're supposed to make it happen and so on and so on. And yet in my life, I never had a single like meaningful relationship that lasted, that came from me initiating it. All the good things in my life, including women, came to me. It was always some type of verbal or non-verbal invitation, subtle or non-subtle invitation. And again, once you learn how to work with that, it's not a problem. It doesn't make you less manly. But if you listen just to some teachings and the superficial layer of those teachings on masculinity and all those things and polarity and how you're supposed to be as a man and so on, you might start feeling that there's a problem with you, you know, when it's just about your profile.
Well, I get inspired now that you've started talking about your profile. Let's pull up your profile first, and like.
Sure. You want to put it on the screen?
Yeah, I'll put you on the screen. Give me 1 second. I got to actually open it up. This one. Okay. So yeah, I'll share that. Here we go. Here you are. This is your. This is Fabrice's design. You want to walk us through a little bit of it? Obviously, we're not going to go super deep because there's so far that we can go in a design. I don't know the full extent to which a design can go, but I definitely know enough. And so for those of you new to human design, you're looking at this weird thing of just like shapes and colors and like, what the hell is going on here? So you want to walk us through some of the basics of your design?
Yeah, well, again, without going into too many details, first of all, my type, you know, being a projector, and I was just mentioning what it's like to be a projector. And when it comes here, let's stick with the theme of relationships and this thing of polarity as well. And I guess we can include some stuff about boundaries as well. I'm not supposed to initiate things. Now, that doesn't mean that I can never, you know, initiate anything in life, but especially with the big things. So when it comes to work, guiding other people and so on, I need to be invited. When it comes to relationships, it's also important to be invited into them. And an invitation, again, it doesn't have to always be a formal invitation. Yeah, sometimes a woman sitting right next to you and you feel her openness and then a conversation starts and so on. Yeah, that is an invitation in itself. There are subtle and non-subtle invitations. And in fact, as a projector, if you don't have a certain depth in your sensitivity and awareness of the other, you're really going to struggle, because if you're waiting for formal invitations for everything in your life and you're not picking up on the subtle cues and you're deaf to or blind to those cues, it's going to be a challenge for you. So you need to develop the sensitivity.
There's also, I've seen in projectors, there's also a way of inviting yourself. Like you can create opportunities to invite yourself. You go like things like, you know, can I share something about that? Or would you like to hear, I have some thoughts about that if you'd like to hear them more. You know, these kind of ways. I have some friends who do that with me as projectors. And when they do that, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to hear that. But then I've also had projectors in my life who share with me without being invited. And it feels like being violated. I literally feel like, get out of me. Like, I didn't give you permission to come inside of my space, get out. But when that invitation has been asked for, I've asked for it, and I can feel that projector aura kind of come into me. It can feel quite nice. It's like, okay, this is what I want you to look at. Don't go rummaging around anywhere else. You're welcome here, you know, and you see here, and then the projector gives incredible guidance, incredible clarity or insight can come from that space.
Yeah, and bringing it back to the theme of relationships, as a man, you can find ways to get those invitations, you know, to even in a situation, let's say you're at a party and there's a girl you like, there are ways to attract her towards you without even having to say anything. Yeah, there are like more subtle ways to play with those things in which you're not forcing it. You're not, in my case, for example, having an open throat, I'm also not really supposed to initiate conversations. Yeah, in general, I have a defined ajna in head. So my mind is fully defined. It's a very fixed mind. But I don't have it connected to the throat. And so I'm under a lot of mental pressure. A lot wants to be shared, but I need to learn to wait to be able to share it. Yes. And to be invited to share what's inside. And same if we talk about the other centers, none of them are connected to the throat. The throat is undefined. And so in general, for me, it's much more about learning when and how to speak rather than the quantity of speech and trying to initiate talks all over the place. And it's true, it never felt natural. You know, this thing of like being a pickup artist and, you know, forcing yourself to go in the street and to, you know, start 50 conversation with 50 women and it always felt super counterintuitive because, and later on looking at my profile, I'm like, okay, there's literally nothing in my profile which is telling me to do that. And again, like I haven't had to struggle in life with women and relationships, and I never had to do any of this stuff anyways. As I said, like the good things just come, and there's something happens when, whether it's through your profile or through your own work on yourself, both, when you really start like entering the state of self-empowerment and you stop compromising, and you need to have the firm belief that, you know, whatever, if you have my profile, whatever is meant for me will come to me. Yeah, and I'm also a 4/6, and so the fourth line in human design is called the opportunist, and it's true. You know, even like I've now been in a relationship for almost 4 years, and it came in the very opportunistic way, which was, you know, through someone else. I didn't even have to do anything. The double date was arranged, and it all just came to me very, very easily. I didn't have to chase or none of that. And so that's just an example. My previous long-term relationship before that was 5 years, and it also started in a way that was not pushed or forced or anything like that. So yeah, that's, you know, that's something I can say about my profile. And the most important in relationships is really the awareness of our open centers, you know, and that's something we spend a lot of time on in the program. We go deep on all of the centers, defined versus undefined. And you know, we're not going to go into details with this now, but it's definitely an important piece of it.
That's all these.
What else did you see in there?
Well, one thing that I like hearing all of that, like, so just staying at the level of projector, and we'll maybe go a little bit deeper, but not too much further. I want to ask, like, what does it feel like when you are invited? Like, what is that experience like? So for example, when I invited you to come and co-teach with me, what did it feel like? When someone says, hey, I really want your feedback on this thing, or I want to hear what you have to say, or whatever invitation, what is your experience?
Well, the question is going to be answered with my authority. Yeah, now like you're leading me to this theme of inner authority, which is basically the inner authority in human design is how we are meant to make decisions in the best possible way. And in my case, because I have a defined solar plexus, the solar plexus is the emotional center. I am what's called an emotional authority, which is, by the way, about 50% of people are emotional authorities. It means that for me, and I'm not going to go into the details of why in this call, but for me, I'm really supposed to wait and take my time. Why? Because I first tend to have emotional reactions to things, whether it's positive or negative, or it doesn't matter, but I've learned to wait things out before giving any sort of definite answer, you know. And in the past, and again, touching back on relationships, I used to make way too many promises and commitment that came from a good place. It was just that I was high on my emotional wave, and I was full of, you know, hope and desire and excitement, and you know, I was like, yeah, like let's do this and that and that, and making too many promises and commitments, and you know, ending up betraying, you know, in small or big ways, the women that I was with, or even friends or so on, because I was not able to follow through, you know. And I've learned over time to really take my time before making any commitments, before giving any answers, whether it's you in my intimate relationships or in professional relationships or in friendships or whatever. And that's been a real lifesaver, So coming back to your question, like, what is the experience of it? Well, the experience of it is, I think deep down, like at my core, there's like a deep feeling of openness and joy that comes from simply being seen, because that's what it means to be invited. You've been recognized. You've been seen. It's like, oh, and of course there are different degrees of it. But then more on the surface is this emotional process. Yeah. And I just have to go through that. It's like, okay, how am I feeling about this? And I just wait it out, and I take my time. Like I used to be more desperate for invitations, especially, both in intimate situations and professionally. And so I used to just rush into them. And that's something I've noticed, which is not a good place to be in for projectors. This kind of desperation and hunger for recognition, and then just ready to say yes to anything. Yeah, because being invited is one thing, but you're not supposed to say yes to every invitation. Not every single invitation that comes your way is correct for you. Yeah, and so the process is really taking it in. And in my case, like, if someone was a splenic authority, then it would be different. They could, in the moment, they know if it's a yes or a no. In my case, I need to wait it out, take my time. And so that's the main process that I go through, and I might be like, there might be like certain invitation, I'll feel like a lot of excitement, inside, like, and imagine like all the ways in which it could go amazing and right. And then another time I'm going through all the ways in which it could maybe go wrong, or like the negative emotions that I have around it, and some more like neutral stuff. And eventually it kind of flatlines, and then I come to some sense of clarity. Yeah, but it's really, in my case, it's all about taking my time.
And I also see, like, what stands out for me is like, yes, there's the emotional authority, but then there's also the spleen and the ego centers, and they're attached together. So I imagine that once that emotional wave passes, then there's the question of, is this going to be good for my well-being? And do I have enough willpower to back it up? If I say yes to this invitation, am I actually going to be able to back it up with my ego energy?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's, the order in authorities as well. And once this part here and this emotional wave has passed, then it's mostly about this. And you're talking about a professional invitation, and the 4426 is very connected to, it's one of the tribal channels, and this one is one of the names for it is the channel of the entrepreneur, and the influence over the tribe, and connected to selling and business and so on. And so definitely this channel connecting those two centers is going to be one of the main ways in which I reply to the invitation as well. Does it feel correct or not on that level?
I'd also love to just ask, like, maybe just a couple more pieces on your design, like the triple split. I'd love to hear like how you experience this triple split, because we've got this splenic root connection, solar plexus root connection here. We've got this spleen ego connection here, and then we've got this ajna head, and then we've got these three separate kind of aspects of yourself. And like, I'm just curious, like, how's that experience for you? Do you experience like you have kind of three different aspects of yourself? Or do they work together internally? Or like, what's that like?
Yeah, well, it is kind of like having three people inside. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing, by the way, but it really feels like you have three distinct aspects to yourself that are not necessarily communicating. And that's the theory behind splits. Yeah, there is no energetical connection between those parts. And so we are craving that wholeness and connection. We're craving, the people that are going to connect all our channels so that we can be, a single definition, everything together. Now, the difference between a split definition, so two parts of the profile, and a triple split like me, three parts of the profile, is that the split definition is more looking for that one person, because usually they only need like one gate, one channel to be connected, whereas as a triple split, I'm not, and I don't want to. I'm not hoping to, and I don't want to put that pressure onto one person. And even if, because sometimes one person can bridge all my splits, and even that, it's like, it's not quite it. I'm not looking for that. What I'm really looking for is the right community of people. Yeah. So it's really, I need to be in an environment where I have access to a variety of people on a daily or weekly basis. Yeah. And I feel at my best because those three different aspects, I can't expect one person to fulfill all of those needs, because every part of my profile has different needs in social and situations, in interactions and relationship. You know, like this one down here, this channel is a very sensitive tribal kind of awareness that needs a lot of touch, that needs a lot of cuddles. It's also, it's all the foundational need is connected to food and sex and so on, but it's, you know, very, very primal kind of tribal gate, tribal channel, sorry. And so this one is much more connected to my physical and emotional needs. Yeah. And that's there. I feel it, you know, it's a strong thing. But then on the other side here, I was just talking about, you know, this channel of the entrepreneur, yeah, and the ego drive to influence and sell, and the 44, you know, connecting to the right fractal line and to the right people. But this one is much more, you know, it's my main work channel, I would say. And so I also need to have interactions with people that you know, with whom it feels right to work with. And they don't have the same, it doesn't have to be the same people, you know, with whom I'm cuddling in the evening, you know, or it, like the woman I live with and have sex with doesn't have to be the same one with whom I'm working. Yeah, it doesn't all have to fit. And lastly, this one, the 6124, you know, it's the mystical channel. It's a mental theme, but it's really like using the mind to go beyond the mind. Yeah, and so, and I've like really most of my 20s have been spent on mystical teachings and spirituality and so on, and that was probably the one that was the most active out of all of them. And this one, in a way, you know, if I only tap into this, it couldn't care less about the other two. Like it really, that one could just go and retreat and meditate all the time. And because the 24 here, and which is my life's work, the highest expression of it is called silence, you know, and so that one could really just be in silent retreat and, you know, living a very, very simple spiritual life in this way. But it's not that simple. I have, you know, others. And so this one needs, well, it needs this silence, a long time and so on, but also it needs to interact with other similar minds, you know, and to share. And even like all of the study of human design and gene keys, it's fully through this thing here. And so, you know, all those more like intellectual / mystical / spiritual / whatever you want to call it conversations, you know, discussing, and even it can go into, you know, science and quantum physics and all of that, because it's really like just discussing and mental interactions about the mystery of the universe in whatever shape or form. And so that's what it's craving. And I can't expect one person to give me all of that all the time, you know, but if I have the right community around me, that's not an issue. You know, I have access to a wide range of people and I love it. I really feel like when I'm with someone, it's like I really feel exactly what it is that I get from them, and also the gifts that I have to offer and which ones they're able to receive, you know. And so it's this double kind of fulfillment that I only get when I get a wide range of interactions.
Last kind of question on your profile is, what part of your profile currently is like, would you say, most active in your contemplation, or like the thing that you're kind of like working on understanding and deconditioning and stepping into the most? Like, where in your profile is your attention kind of the most, if there is somewhere?
Well, you asked me the same question last time, but with the Gene Keys profile, which is where most of my contemplation is at the moment. I think it will be the Open G at the moment. It's kind of, I've always been aware of it, but I never went like really, really deep into it. And so the G center in the middle right there, which is connected to our sense of identity and direction in life. And how, when you have it open, it can be really difficult to have a sense of direction. And I can have direction, like I have direction on the material plane because I have my ego defined. I have a clear sense of direction on the spiritual level as well. So I don't feel lost per se, but the G center is really like your inner compass. And this inner compass, I notice people who have it defined, it's very easy in a moment to moment to you just know what's right for you and you just make very easy decisions here and there. Whereas for me, having an open G and on top of it, having the emotional process to go through, decision making on a day-to-day basis can feel so fucking difficult. It's just like, I just don't know. It's weird. My partner also has an open G, but when we're together, our composite charts, our G is defined. And so that's interesting as well. Like when we're together, suddenly the directions comes with more clarity. And it has been true. It's like, in a way, the relationship and the work we do through the relationship is giving a clear sense of direction, to our soul and heart. Also being aware of how much I can take on other people's identities. And I've learned to play with it and enjoy it. I always say, like, the ideal profile for an actor would be open G and open throat. The ability to change your character and the way you speak, to be like a chameleon and to really take on this role. And it's plenty of fun when you know how to play with it. But nonetheless, I'm aware of it. Like, wow, when I'm in different environments with different people, I can really be, and I'm never different at my core, who I am and my core values and what I stand for, like none of that changes. But on the surface, it's really like playing a different kind of character, and entering, also with the open throat, it can be like different way of talking and different jokes and different, and again, if you're aware of it and if you know how to play with it, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but I've become very, very aware of it.
I noticed, like, for a long time when I started getting into my human design, I didn't really pay much attention to the G, and then I started becoming aware of, I also have an open G, and I would start getting aware of how conditioned I would get by when I was around people with defined Gs, around their model of relationship. They would tell me how they thought, like, the ideal relationship that they wanted, or how they were designing their relationship, or what they thought what love was, or anything like that. And I would spend a little bit of time with them, and they'd leave, and I would like be thinking that I was like, oh, maybe I should do exactly what they were just saying, and I should, like, make space for this, or like I should take that process on. And it hit me really hard. And then I'd be like, 2 days later, I'd be like, hang on a second, like, that's not me. Like, that's not my thinking. It was so interesting when I started noticing the ways that I would take on other people's maps of relationship through that open G.
Yeah. And on one hand, it's great because it means you can fit in a lot of environments. But on the other hand, it's not so great because, well, you need to make sure you're in the right kind of environments for you. Yeah. Like, because you are so influenced, you want to make sure, like, that's the kind of influence that you want, and it's, I guess, the same is valid for all open centers. You want to be picky with that influence.
Yeah. Cool. Let's throw up my
let's do it.
My design. So I'll just open up my design. Hang on a second. Here I am. So this here is me, and as you can see, it's different than Fabrice's one. And this is our science of differentiation. We have a distinct difference to how our designs are constructed and how we understand them. And as we were saying before, I'm a manifestor, which means that I'm here to initiate. I'm here to make things happen. And it's interesting in that I've known that about myself for a long time, long before I even knew human design existed. There was some part of me that knew that I could mobilize people. I remember one time when I was living in Thailand and I was staying in I was living on a kind of a working rice farm. It was like a community rice farm. There was like lots of transient people coming in and out. And I remember one time we were all sitting around playing guitar and just hanging out at this hut that was like right at the end of the property, quite far away from the kitchen. And I started getting hungry. And I noticed like I was hungry, but I didn't want to leave the connection that we were to get something to eat. And I was like, I think it's time for dinner. And I just like, I said a couple of things. I think I said it to 2 or 3 different people. I was like, let's go make some dinner. And I kind of like put it out there. And within 10 minutes, the entire group got up, walked all the way to the kitchen and started creating dinner. And it was like, it happened as a whole group. And from the outside, you would have just thought it was an organic group process. But I knew that I had initiated that. I had created the spark to allow that event to occur. And I realized that I'd done this a lot through my life. I would mobilize people to do something, to go in a certain direction when I had an impulse that this is where to go. And I would rarely ever even get noticed for it. I would notice, but hardly ever would anyone notice that I had influenced the entire direction of some group. It even happened in a meeting that I was just in for a festival that I'm assisting running. There's now there's a theme of the butterfly, and then we've got like, we're going to have temporary tattoos of butterflies as instead of a wristband. But that was something that I initiated, and I just put it out there at the moment, let's do this. And now it's actually happening. Someone else went and got the butterfly tattoos, and it's all part of the process now. But I initiated that process. And so it's like, that's something that I recognize as the manifestor. There's a lot of initiation. It's not necessarily the following up. It's not necessarily the doing of it. Sometimes like I feel like I'm an ideas factory. Like there's just ideas to do things that pour through me constantly. And I throw them out there. I walk through my life telling anyone who wants to listen to my ideas, as many of them as I can. And I've got this awareness of like, and I have to tell people. So the manifestor is all about informing, right? So I have to tell people what I'm up to. And so I'll often tell people like, I've just moved into a house with a new housemate, and I've had to let him know that like, I have lots of ideas, and sometimes I'm going to be throwing ideas out, and he's a generator. So sometimes, especially manifesting generators can really struggle with it, but generators can too. It can feel like all my ideas can feel like a pressure to respond. So I'll often inform people and say, you don't have to respond to anything that you don't want to. Like, I'm just going to throw out ideas. And if anything becomes interesting to you ever in the time that we're together, say, hey, I'm curious about that one. Let's do that one. And I'll be like, and similarly, like you, when you feel invited, you feel an openness. When I get someone responding to my initiation, it's like, suddenly I feel connected to their sacral. If they're a generator or manifesting energy generator, suddenly I'm like connected to energy. And it's like, I can pour something into that. And that energy kind of like builds, and there's some kind of vibration that starts occurring of like, we can now do something.
And how does it feel with a projector? How does it feel for a projector to, I don't know if respond is the right word, but whether it's in in your case, like you and me, for example, I'm a projector, you're a manifestor, and I'm jumping on this project with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. How does it feel also to be with a projector woman, and how they respond to you in intimate settings?
It's interesting. It's such a different experience to be with a projector. There is a sense of like, I sometimes like saying projectors feel like cats to me. They're like, there's this independence, there's this slow timing, there's this sense of like, I'm going to do what I want when I want to do it, And if I give a really good invitation to a kitty, I'm like, come here, come on, and I'm like, I'm inviting, the cat will come over and like nuzzle up to me, but it's not going to be like a dog. I feel like manifesting generators have more of a dog energy of like, hey, you want to go for a walk? And manifesting generators go like, yeah, I've lived with a manifesting generator before, a male friend of mine, and I'd come home and I'd have an idea. I'd be like, do you want to work out? Or you want to do? He was always a yes to everything. He'd go, yes, let's do it. And he'd get super excited. And suddenly we'd be like knee deep in some adventure, we'd get active on something. Projectors don't respond in that way. I can't and I have to remember that sometimes, because if I don't remember that, I'll get frustrated, because I'm like, hey, you want to do this thing? And a projector's like, I don't know. There's no sacral, there's no boom, there's no engine to it. So it really does feel more and more like an invitation. When I'm operating with a projector, I'm just like, I want to leave lots of space. I'm like, hey, would you like to do this thing? And I just leave loads of space for them to go, Yeah, that sounds good. And so with you, like when we're working together, I don't make any requests of you, and I'm very clear like that. I don't make actual requests. I ask, I say, hey, is it possible, to do this whenever you can, or can I get this bit of information or something like that? And you'll just let me know when you can. You go, I'll get to it this time or at this moment, and there's a very kind of interesting interchange that happens there. There's a very different interchange in energy between a projector and a generator or a manifesting generator. And then it's even more interesting with other manifestors. With other manifestors, it's almost like a hey, like what's up? What are you up to? Like I can't ask manifestors to do anything. It's like I've had manifestors on my team from time to time. I never expect a manifestor to stay very long. They're going to come in when they want to come in and they're going to leave when they want to leave. Like that's just how they are. Generators are like the core of a business team, and generators is because they commit and then they just show up and show up and show up and show up and show up. And it's amazing. Manifesting generators come in and out. They can do short, intense projects, but they won't stay for any length of time. And projectors feel like it's a longer view. Like you've often said, they're either consultants or there's some other relationship. There's a longer kind of timing with a projector. And similarly, like when I've had a projector lover, it's felt very spacious. It's like sometimes like I've enjoyed it. It feels like I'll hang out with a projector. It's fun to hang out with a projector because it'll feel like I'm alone, but somebody else is there. Like there's no hum. With generators, there's this like hum that never stops, which is fine. It's just there. With a projector, it's like, oh, there's like silence here. There's active silence. Yeah.
And we don't really respond well to any sort of pressure. It's really like a cat. Like when you try to force yourself on the cat and they don't want to be, petted or like, and it's really like that. Like we don't respond to sacral pressure. And we also don't respond to the, initiatory pressure of the manifestor. And if a manifestor will try to tell a projector like, hey, do this, it's just going to go through us. It's not going to bounce or influence anything because there's no sacral there, so it's just like going through and we didn't even see it.
Yeah, projector goes, no, and that'll be like it's like more. Yeah. Whereas a generator will have to go like, oh, like I'm feeling really uncomfortable, like because it's pushing on them. If I'm trying to initiate with a generator, it's like it's pressure that's pushing on them to respond, but it doesn't work that way with a projector. It's a very different experience. I like to say, projectors are like cats, manifesting generators are like dogs with that very like really excitable energy that can run and change direction very quickly. And I think I like to say generators are like elephants or buffaloes or bison or something like that. They're like a big animal that can move with a lot of power. They're not necessarily fast, but they move with a lot of power and they can move through obstacles like nothing else. But getting like them to change direction is a slow process. They don't change direction very quickly. So they have to really be careful of what they commit to. And then I like to think of manifestors are like monkeys. We come down and fuck shit up. We just like come down and just stir everything up and make some chaos and like make things happen and send the elephants running that way and the dogs running that way and the cats like getting their back up, and then we like disappear up a tree, and then we go up the tree for a nap and everything's like all stirred up and stuff's happening and the jungle's all active because the monkey came down and like just messed everything up for a bit.
I like the analogy.
Yeah. So similarly, like you were saying, you're a triple split. I'm just a single split. And I feel that very strongly, like you're saying that when I'm around someone who bridges my split, it's like, I don't really need anything else. I start to lose a lot of interest of socializing, or I really love socializing with that person. I like to go somewhere with that person together, and then we're together and that feels really nice. And this gate 16 is the one that bridges my split straight away. That's the fastest, or the 57. But the 16 in particular, when someone has the gate 16, there's just a good flow of energy between me and them. It just feels really like, I feel like we can kind of do whatever we want. You know, it's the channel of talent, right? So it's like when someone has that 16 to meet the 48, it's like, feels really good. And then I kind of like similarly experienced two distinct parts of me. I experienced this part of me, the spleen connected to the root, which is like a projector part of me. And it's connected through the channel of judgment, which is like, got me into a lot of trouble in my life because I can't help but find the problems with everything. I'm always looking for how things can be improved. I can't help it. But I've since learned that this channel is better used to guide me than to tell anyone else about it. I go to an event.
Or you can guide others with this as long as it's invited. Yeah, it's one of the projected channels, you know. So in a way, we've talked about this before. Like it's like you have this splenic projector, you know, on one side of you, and then you have this ego manifestor, you know, on the other side, and they're separated. They don't connect. And so, but I'm sure you've had to learn the hard way that this energy has to be invited.
Totally. I've definitely, and when it does get invited, similarly, I get a bit of that, what it must feel like to be a projector. I feel like, oh, you want to, yeah, I can totally like share with you everything that I see and like really supportive in that. But I've also learned that I can use it for myself. It's like, it's my own internal guidance. And it's splenic. It's a splenic authority that's very much concerned with, is this going to be beneficial to my well-being or not? And it's that very fast, like it's a very quick yes. I actually feel like I run on yes. I'm just running on yes all the time. I'm just a running yes until I get a no. And then when I get a no, it's like, it's a no. And I don't even know why sometimes. It's like, nope. I'm just like, okay, that's a no. Simple as that, you know? And it's usually very quiet, but I'm just this big fat yes to life. Like, I'm just like, yep, I'm up for that. I'm up for that. I'm up for that. But I've had to learn to listen to these quiet no's. And then in particular, this ego is, even though it's secondary to the splenic authority, it's actually very important for me to listen to it. Because if I say yes, even though this might say yes, I still have to sometimes pass big things back to my ego and go, do I have enough willpower to carry this through the end? Because if I say yes to something, I'll commit to it, even if it burns me out. And I will burn out. I can burn out quite easily, and I will burn out. And I know I'm burning out because I start getting mouth ulcers. And if I keep pushing, I actually start getting like boils or something in my body. My body will start burning out if I commit to something that I don't actually have the willpower to finish, because I just won't stop, you know, until it's done. That's really important for me to pay attention to. But then there's this part of my design which I really love, which is the manifestation channel, the money channel, which is really tribal and really cares about gathering resources for the tribe. And I really do care about like the tribe and wanting to like provide everything I can to support the tribe. That really motivates me. And then there's the channel of curiosity, or entertainment, it's sometimes also called, which is like, I feel like with this channel, I'm able to synthesize information very quickly. And I'm able to look between, you know, I can read a book on trauma, and I can read a book by David Data, and then I can read a book on, say, business, and I can see the links between all three things. And then I can articulate a model based on all three things very easily. And I have the capacity to speak quite strongly what I understand. And I can, and also this line one investigator really supports that too. And so I can investigate things quite deeply and then synthesize and convey them very quickly, you know. And that seems to be what I get known for, is my ability to articulate things. And that's very clear here in my design.
And you were talking about ideas, you know, the 11 is the gate of ideas, and they just want to come out and be shared.
Yeah, they're pouring out of me. And then I know that it's like this defined ego and this channel here is very forceful. And I get told all the time to speak more quietly, because I get excited. This gets really excited. My ideas get excited. Even in this talk, you'll see I get excited. My voice goes up. I speak more forcefully. And I know I forget all the time. And people have to say, hey, it's late. Can you speak a little bit quiet? I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I got excited. And I'm just have to learn I just get told all the time, because once this ego gets involved, there's like this immense passion that pours behind my words. And it can feel like people can feel like, they have to brace themselves, because I'm just like hitting them with my, with my enthusiasm, which can be really powerful when I'm teaching or presenting something. Like I'll give a presentation, times when I do talk, and I'll end and I'll be like, are there any questions? And people are just sitting there like, happens so many times. And there's like, you got any questions? And people are like, and I have to like actually give them a few minutes to kind of recover. I'm like, it's all right. Take your time. I'm not in a rush. When you're ready. And then usually like 2 or 3 minutes, people kind of like shake themselves out, and then the question starts. But I'm very aware that there's this impact I'm having.
Yeah, and it's probably mostly felt by the sickle types, by generators, manifesting generators. Yeah.
So that's kind of an intro to my design. Obviously there's a lot more layers to it, but it's been such an interesting experience to refer back to my design over and over again. And I have pretty much the entire design in my head now. So like, I know what you probably do too, right? Like I know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Not all of it. Like I don't have all of the placements in my head or anything. I've got some of them, but I've got my design to the point where when I look up someone else's design, I can see the composite chart without even having to look at it with my chart. I can already see where my design overlaps with someone else's design, which is fun, because I get a very fast read on what is our relationship like and what is the potential of it.
And that's something we can do in another call, whether for this program or for the next one, which is more relational, but we can definitely look at our composite chart and especially in terms of work dynamics.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of like the science of differentiation. You can see that like Fabrice and I have distinctly different designs, and they're different even more deeply than what you just saw there. They're even deeper once we start looking at the placements of the gates in relation to the planets, which links to the gene keys. It creates an even more differentiated chart. And then you can see that Fabrice and I are different human beings. We're going to relate to life differently, and we're going to need different practices. We're going to need different types of relationship. We're going to need different environments that are going to be right for us to thrive, and different ways of relating. And we're going to relate differently and be related to differently. And when we understand that, if Fabrice and I understand that, and we understand each other's design, we can work together really effectively.
Yeah, I mean, if it's all done correctly, the point of all of this is love, is to fall in love with who you are and fall in love with your profile and see how amazing it is, and to fall in love with the other as well, to whether it's your partner or it's a friend or business partner, to see their profile and to be able to look at any profile and to fall in love and to be like, wow, this is amazing for this and this and this and that reason. And because I sometimes see in human design groups like, oh, let's talk about whatever profile, and all the comments like, oh, they're the worst, like, no, you're missing the point. You're really missing the point. That you should be able to be in awe in front of every single line, in front of every single type and authority and all sorts of, and all aspects of the profile, because again, there's no best or worst, or no, they all have their shadows, their gifts, they all have their spiritual path. And yeah, that's the amazing part of all this work.
I love that. And I'm in that work myself. Like I recently have held a bias against the 1-3 profile. There's been a few 1-3 profiles in my life that have like impacted me in a way that I really didn't enjoy. And I started generating this bias around like, 1-3 profiles are really hard, but I actually have started to see more and more healthy versions of the 1-3 show up. And I'm starting to see some of the people that I actually really respect and that I've connected with in the past. Someone recently came back and I looked at his profile, it's a 1-3, and I'm like, oh, I get the beauty of this design profile now. Like I'm starting to see it. there is a beauty in it. There is a particular reason why the 1-3 is the way it is. The 1-3 is here to really understand deeply from an investigative place what is needed, you know, what is like to forge a path based on kind of their own kind of unique interest and their own experience without the noise of everyone else. You know, so they've got no transpersonal part of their profile, which means they're free from the noise. I have a line 4 in my profile, so do you, which means I'm constantly with the noise of how can I serve? How can I contribute to my community? The 1-3 is freed from that to actually go really deep in a way that I don't have the same capacity to. So I'm like, oh, I'm getting it, you know? So I love that what you just shared around like the ability to fall in love with every profile, you know, and to see everyone as absolutely, utterly, magnificently, beautifully unique. You know, love that.
Beautiful way to close this one.
Thanks, Fabrice.